A wealthy man is stopped in his tracks when he sees a homeless woman begging on the street with two young children, only to realize she's the girl he once loved. What he does next changes all their lives forever. Comment below which city or country you're watching from. We'd love to know. Now, let's begin this heartwarming story of second chances, rediscovered love, and the power of kindness that can turn a broken life around. It was a gray afternoon in Chicago. The kind of day where the sky felt too heavy for the city below. Cars rushed by on the wet pavement. People hurried under umbrellas, barely noticing anything around them. But for Ethan Cross, none of that mattered. He wasn't usually the type to take the scenic route. As the CEO of Cross Tech Industries, Ethan was a man who planned every minute of his day. But today, without knowing why, he took a different turn. And that's when he saw her. On the corner of 5th and Halston, a woman sat curled up on a damp blanket. Her clothes were worn, her hands wrapped around two little girls no older than 4. One of the girls was softly crying, while the other clung tightly to her mother's arm. Their eyes were wide, frightened, hungry. Ethan stopped in his tracks. At first, it was the voice that shook him. Soft, trembling, yet filled with warmth. "It's okay, baby, someone will help us soon," the woman whispered as she gently rocked the child in her arms. Then, the realization hit him like a freight train. It was her, the woman he had secretly loved back in high school. The girl who had once filled every notebook page with scribbles of dreams and impossible crushes. Sophia Lane. Her hair was tangled and matted now, her face tired and lined with sorrow. But Ethan would have recognized her anywhere, even after all these years. She hadn't seen him yet. She was too busy comforting her daughters, holding them as though they were the only thing keeping her anchored to this world. He stepped closer. "Sophia?" She looked up slowly, eyes guarded. When recognition finally dawned on her face, it wasn't joy, it was panic. "Ethan?" she said quietly, shifting slightly to cover her daughters with her coat. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Ethan replied, his voice quieter now, almost hoarse. "Why are you here, like this?" Sophia didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked away, brushing the hair from her daughter's face. "It doesn't matter. We'll be fine." But Ethan didn't believe that. Not for a second. He could see the thinness of her frame, the exhaustion in her eyes, the way the girls' clothes hung off them, too small, too old, too tattered. "You're not fine," he said gently. "Come with me, let me help." "No," she said quickly, shaking her head. "We don't need anything." "Yes, you do," he said firmly, "and I'm not leaving you and your girls out here in the cold." Sophia stood up, holding one of the twins while the other clung to her leg. "I don't want your charity, Ethan. This isn't charity," he said. "It's me, finally being where I need to be." There was a pause, a long, aching pause. Then Sophia's legs trembled, and her stubborn pride gave way to a need stronger than her fear. She nodded. Ethan hailed his driver, and within minutes, the three of them were seated in the back of his sleek black SUV. The girls were silent at first, clutching each other tightly, while Sophia stared out the window, her shoulders tense, as if she might bolt at any moment. By the time they reached his estate on the edge of the city, dusk had settled in. The large iron gates opened, revealing a grand mansion bathed in warm lights and soft music filtering out from the living room. The housekeeper, Mrs. Alcott, opened the door and froze when she saw the guests. But with a simple nod from Ethan, she stepped aside and began preparing a guest room. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace offered instant comfort. Ethan gently guided Sophia to the living room and gestured for her to sit down. "Rest, I'll get something for the girls to eat." Sophia clutched both of her daughters tightly, unsure of everything, but too tired to argue. 10 minutes later, a tray of warm soup, fresh bread, and apple slices was set before them. The girls ate hungrily, quietly, without hesitation. Sophia only managed a few spoonfuls, her body too overwhelmed to respond. "Thank you," she whispered, glancing up at Ethan. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Ethan replied softly. "Just let me be here." That night, Sophia and the girls were given a warm guest suite upstairs. Fresh pajamas, heated blankets, a warm bath, For the first time in a very long time, Sophia slept without fear. And Ethan? He sat by the fireplace long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring into the flames. He had always thought of himself as a man with everything: success, money, power. But in that moment, watching Sophia sleep upstairs with her girls safe beside her, he realized just how hollow that everything had been. The next morning brought the scent of coffee and sunlight pouring through the windows. Ethan waited downstairs, dressed in a crisp white shirt, his expression calm but thoughtful. When Sophia entered the dining room, holding Harper and Hazel's hands, there was an awkward pause. The twins, now clean and dressed in soft, borrowed clothes, stared wide-eyed at the breakfast table, piled high with fresh bread, fruit, and warm eggs. Their faces lit up, and they ran to the table with giggles and innocent wonder. But Sophia stood frozen at the doorway. "This is too much," she said quietly. Ethan looked up. "Please, sit down. Let them enjoy it. Let you enjoy it." She hesitated. Years of hardship had taught her not to trust kindness. It always came with a price. But the way Ethan spoke, it didn't feel transactional. It felt sincere. She finally nodded and joined him at the table, spooning oatmeal for the girls as they chattered about the strawberries and fancy juice. Sophia glanced across the table. "You're different, Ethan." He smiled faintly. "So are you." There was a long silence. Then she said it, the words she had carried like a secret weight for years. "His name was Jake. We started dating after prom. I thought he was everything: kind, charming, someone I could trust." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. Jake Miller. He remembered him, popular, arrogant, and ruthless even as a teenager. "I got pregnant a few months later," Sophia continued, her voice trembling. "When I told him, he walked away, said he wasn't ready to be a father and didn't want the burden." Ethan's chest ached as he watched her struggle to stay composed. "He never came back?" "No," she whispered. "I haven't seen him since. No support, no contact, just silence." He leaned forward, voice steady. "You don't have to go through this alone anymore, Sophia. I want to help you. Not just today, or this week. I want to help you rebuild." She looked up at him, eyes full of disbelief. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Ethan hesitated, then finally said the truth. "Because despite everything, I still care about you. I always have." Sophia blinked. "Ethan, that was years ago." "I know," he said, "but some feelings don't fade just because time passes." That night, after dinner, Sophia tucked the girls into bed. They were already adapting, laughing more, sleeping peacefully. The tightness in their small shoulders had loosened just a little. She stepped into the hallway and leaned against the doorframe, listening to their quiet breathing. Ethan passed by with 2 mugs of tea. He paused, holding one out to her. "You need this." Sophia accepted it with a soft, "Thanks," and they walked together to the sitting room. The fire crackled softly in the background. "I feel like I'm dreaming," she said, "like this could all disappear tomorrow." Ethan turned to her. "It won't, not if you're ready to start again." She looked down at the mug in her hands. "I want to, but I don't even know where to begin. I never finished school. I don't have a resume. Who's going to hire someone like me?" Ethan reached into a folder beside him and pulled out a few papers. "What if you went back to school, got your diploma, took some courses? I'll cover everything: tuition, books, childcare, whatever you need." Sophia stared at the papers, stunned. "That's a lot, Ethan. I can't take advantage of you like that." "You're not," he said gently. "You'd be investing in yourself. And in Harper and Hazel." She ran her fingers over the cover page of the college brochure. The thought of studying again, of sitting in a classroom, it terrified her. But it also gave her a flicker of hope. "You really think I can do it?" she asked quietly. "I know you can." The next few days moved slowly, but something inside Sophia began to shift. Each morning, she woke up in a warm bed with her daughters curled beside her, safe and fed. And every day, Ethan made it a point to check in, not just to offer help, but to listen. One afternoon, Sophia found herself alone in the study, the college enrollment forms still sitting untouched on the desk. She had looked at them so many times she had the words memorized. Yet every time she lifted a pen, her hand froze. When Ethan walked in and saw her staring at the papers again, He didn't ask why she hadn't filled them out yet. He just set down a soft leather notebook and an elegant pen beside her. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "A place to plan your future," he said. "Write down what you want. No limits, no fears, just what you really want for yourself and your girls." She looked at the notebook, then back at him. "What if I write something I can't reach? Then we figure out how to get you there. Together." Sophia opened the notebook that evening and sat quietly in the soft light of the bedroom lamp. The twins were asleep, and the house was finally quiet. She stared at the first blank page, her mind racing. After a moment, she wrote just 2 words. Stability, peace. The next morning, Ethan asked her to come along on a quick trip to town. She hesitated at first but agreed when she saw the twins' eager faces. They visited a small boutique children's store, and for the first time, Harper and Hazel ran freely between the racks, giggling as they held up tiny dresses and sparkly shoes. "Can I really get this, Mommy?" Harper asked, holding a bright blue dress that shimmered in the light. Sophia's heart ached at her daughter's uncertainty. "Yes, baby, you can." Hazel, the quieter twin, held up a pair of sneakers. "Me too?" Sophia bent down, brushing the girl's hair gently. "You too, my love." Ethan watched the scene from a few feet away, his arms crossed but his expression soft. "They're amazing," he said quietly as Sophia stood beside him. "You've raised 2 incredible little girls. They've been my reason to keep going," she whispered, "even on the worst days. They were my light. You're stronger than you realize, Sophia, to go through everything you have and still show up every day for them. That's the kind of strength most people never find." She smiled weakly. "I don't know if it's strength or just stubbornness. Maybe both," Ethan said with a chuckle. Back at the mansion, Sophia tucked the girls into bed while Ethan waited downstairs. When she joined him in the living room, he was already sitting with 2 cups of tea. "You mentioned wanting to work again," he said. "What kind of job are you thinking about?" She took a long pause before answering. "Honestly, I don't have any real qualifications. I'd take anything that lets me care for the girls and still earn something." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "What if you didn't have to settle? What if you could finish your education and eventually do something that actually excites you?" She looked at him skeptically. "That sounds impossible." "It's not. It'll be hard, yes, but not impossible." He stood and handed her a new folder. Inside were 3 local community colleges with flexible online programs, childcare resources, and part-time job listings. Sophia stared at the information. "Ethan, this is too much. I don't even know how to begin." "You begin by believing you can." For the first time, she didn't dismiss the idea immediately. Maybe, just maybe, this could be her second chance. That night, as she lay awake in bed, she thought about all the nights she had cried herself to sleep with her daughters in her arms, unsure what tomorrow would bring. Now, there was a door open in front of her, a door she thought would stay shut forever. And Ethan, he wasn't just holding it open. He was waiting patiently, quietly, until she was ready to walk through it. Sophia spent the next few days slowly adjusting to the rhythm of this new life. Mornings were filled with laughter from the twins playing in the sunlit garden, while afternoons brought quiet hours of study and reflection. Ethan had given her time, space, and the tools to begin again, and she was beginning to believe she actually could. She had started taking online courses in the evenings, often at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her notes spread across the surface. The first few lessons felt like trying to run through deep water, slow, frustrating, and exhausting, but over time, it got better. She found her rhythm, and Ethan noticed. One afternoon, he entered the study where she was bent over a workbook, her brow furrowed in concentration. He held 2 cups of tea and wore a small, proud smile. "You're doing really well," he said, setting one of the cups beside her. She looked up, surprised. "I feel like I'm just barely hanging on." "Maybe, but from where I'm standing, you're climbing." She smiled and leaned back in her chair. "It's still strange, being here. Having support, having someone believe in me." Ethan didn't say anything at first. He just sat on the edge of the desk beside her. "You don't have to do everything alone anymore." That night, as the girls slept, Sophia found herself in the garden, sitting under the stars. The cool night air wrapped around her like a quiet comfort. She hadn't realized how much weight she had been carrying until it started to lift. She closed her eyes. I've made so many mistakes, she whispered to herself. What if I mess this up too? She didn't notice Ethan standing nearby until he spoke. Then we fix it together. She looked up, startled. He was sitting on the edge of the wooden swing, arms resting on his knees, watching the sky. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, he added, but I heard what you said. Sophia stared down at her hands. You've done so much for us. And I still feel like I don't deserve it. No one's perfect, he said. Not me, not you, but you're doing the work. That's what matters. Sophia took a deep breath. I never said thank you properly. You don't have to, he replied, but if you want to, just keep going. That's enough for me. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. It was the kind of silence that only happens between two people who are beginning to understand each other on a deeper level. The next morning, Ethan invited her to visit the office with him, not for work. Just to observe. Think of it as a field trip, he said with a grin. I want you to see how things work. No pressure. She hesitated. What if I say something wrong? What if I embarrass myself? You won't, he said, handing her a blazer. Just be yourself. The office building was sleek and impressive, all glass and marble and polished floors. Sophia felt out of place at first, but Ethan walked beside her like she belonged there, introducing her to staff, explaining departments, answering her questions. By the end of the visit, she was exhausted, but glowing. She had even sat in on a negotiation meeting, watching Ethan guide his team with calm authority and respect. You're a natural at this, she told him later. He smirked. It took a lot of failure to get here, but I had someone believe in me. Once. I'm just returning the favor. As they drove home that evening, the twins fell asleep in the back seat, curled against each other, their cheeks pink from a day spent outdoors. Sophia glanced at Ethan, who had one hand on the steering wheel, his other resting loosely in his lap. Thank you for today, she said softly. There's no need to thank me, he replied. This day was for all of us. That night, as they tucked the girls into bed and stepped into the hallway, Sophia turned to him, her voice low. You've changed our lives, Ethan. He looked at her for a long moment before answering. You've changed mine too. There was a silence between them, not heavy, but meaningful. Her heart thudded, unsure what to say, unsure if she even could. He didn't try to push her. Instead, he gave her the kindest thing anyone had ever given her. Time. The days passed with an ease Sophia hadn't felt in years. Slowly but surely, she began to settle into the rhythm of her new life. The girls were thriving, running barefoot through the gardens, drawing with chalk on the stone paths, giggling as they played hide and seek in corners of the mansion. Their laughter brought the once silent house to life. But even as things felt lighter, Sophia couldn't ignore the lingering shadow of her past. It clung to her in quiet moments, when the girls napped, when Ethan smiled too kindly, when she caught her reflection and remembered the woman who once cried herself to sleep with babies in her arms and nowhere to go. One evening, Ethan found her in the study, her eyes scanning a set of financial reports he had casually left on the desk earlier. I didn't mean to pry, she said as he entered. I was just curious. He smiled. Curious is good. Most people don't even glance at numbers unless they have to. She set the papers down. I guess I wanted to understand what you do, how you manage it all. Would you like to try working with me? He asked. Her brow furrowed. You mean, like a job? Temporary, flexible, something to help you apply what you're learning while still being there for Harper and Hazel. Ethan explained. Only if you want to. Sophia hesitated. It was a generous offer, and part of her was excited. But another part, the cautious, battered part, wasn't sure if mixing work and emotions was a good idea. I don't want things to get complicated, she said carefully. They won't, and the moment they feel that way, we adjust. No pressure. She agreed to try. The next few weeks were filled with a quiet momentum. In the mornings, Sophia worked on reports and market research alongside Ethan's assistant. In the afternoons, she studied while the twins played or napped. Evenings were spent around the dinner table, followed by bedtime stories and soft lullabies. The balance wasn't perfect, but it was real, tangible, hopeful. Ethan's presence grew more familiar, more comforting. He never pushed her, never rushed her, just stood beside her, offering help when she reached for it, space when she needed it. One night, after the twins had gone to bed, he brought her a steaming cup of tea and sat beside her on the living room couch. "You've grown so much since you got here," he said. Sophia smiled shyly. "I still feel like I have so far to go." "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," he replied. "You're already enough, just as you are." Her heart fluttered unexpectedly. That quiet warmth she had tried to ignore was becoming harder to deny. She wasn't just rebuilding her life, she was beginning to feel something for the man who had helped her piece it back together. That night, while washing dishes in the kitchen, Sophia caught her reflection in the window. She barely recognized the woman looking back. She looked peaceful, even happy. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please let this be real." The next few days brought more of the same beautiful rhythm. The girls were blossoming. Hazel, who once rarely spoke, now chattered freely about flowers and colors. Harper had taken a liking to helping the cook in the kitchen and proudly announced she would be a chef with a ponytail. And Ethan was present in every way that mattered, whether reading to the twins, staying up late to help Sophia with her assignments, or simply offering a quiet smile across the room. He was there. But not everything stayed perfect. One afternoon, while Sophia was reviewing files in the home office, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. She hesitated, then opened it. The photo hit her like a slap. It was Ethan, sitting at a restaurant, talking to an elegant woman. The message underneath read, "Do you really know who he is?" Her stomach twisted. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. She didn't know what bothered her more, the image itself, or the fear it awakened in her. The fear of being betrayed. Again. Later that evening, Ethan found her unusually quiet. She was folding laundry in the guest room when he stepped in. "Is something wrong?" he asked gently. She held up her phone, her voice guarded. "I got this today." Ethan took one look and sighed. "That's Margaret Monroe. She's a senior advisor from my company. We had lunch to discuss a deal." Sophia crossed her arms. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't think I had to," he said honestly. There was nothing to hide. She nodded slowly, trying to believe him. "I want to trust you, Ethan, but my whole life has been full of disappointment. It's hard to turn that off." He stepped closer and gently took her hands. "Then don't turn it off. Just let me stand beside you while you figure it out." Tears welled in her eyes. But she didn't let them fall. Not yet. She wasn't ready to collapse into love. But she was starting to lean toward it. The message had shaken her, but not broken her. For once, instead of retreating into fear, Sophia chose to stand in the middle of it and ask for clarity. And Ethan, he didn't run from her questions. He stood right there with her. In the days that followed, he quietly launched a search to track down the sender of the message. It didn't take long to uncover the truth. It had come from a former employee he had let go several months earlier. Bitter, disgruntled, petty. When Ethan told her, Sophia didn't say anything at first. She just nodded, then turned her gaze to the garden where Harper and Hazel were chasing butterflies with painted paper nets. "Someone went out of their way to hurt me," she said softly. "To hurt us." Ethan stepped beside her, and they failed. That evening, Sophia found herself sitting in the study again. The leather notebook open in front of her. She flipped through the pages. Her handwriting had changed, once unsure and shaky, now firm and steady. She had goals, ideas, a plan. When Ethan knocked lightly on the door and stepped inside, she looked up with a tired but hopeful smile. He was holding something in his hand, a small box. She blinked. "What's that?" He sat down across from her and opened it slowly. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, glowing softly in the golden light. Sophia stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. "I know this is sudden," he began, "and I know you've been through more than anyone ever should. But I love you, Sophia. I love your strength, your fire, the way you fight for your daughters. And I love them too." She covered her mouth, eyes filling with tears. "I don't want to rush you. I'll wait as long as you need. But if there's even a part of you that wants this life with me, I'm asking, will you marry me?" There was a long, trembling pause. Then, her voice barely a whisper, she said, "Yes." The moment felt unreal, like a quiet, Beautiful dream that neither of them wanted to wake up from. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms. The storm that had once raged around them had finally cleared, and a new chapter had begun. In the days that followed, wedding preparations began, nothing extravagant, just simple, heartfelt plans that included Harper and Hazel every step of the way. The girls were ecstatic, treating every day like a fairy tale coming to life. The morning of the wedding, Sophia stood in front of the mirror in a modest white dress. Her reflection looked like someone else, someone who had fought, fallen, and risen again. Behind her, Harper and Hazel twirled in matching pink flower dresses. "Mommy, you look like a queen," Hazel whispered. Sophia turned and hugged them both. "I feel like one." The ceremony was held in the garden, under a canopy of fairy lights and blooming roses. Ethan stood waiting, his eyes never leaving hers as she walked down the aisle. There were no grand speeches, just a quiet exchange of vows, whispered promises, and the kind of love that didn't need an audience to be real. That night, in their room, Ethan turned to her and whispered, "Welcome home, Mrs. Cross." Sophia smiled through happy tears. It took a long time to get here, and it was worth every step. In the months that followed, their new life unfolded with grace. Ethan continued supporting Sophia's education while stepping fully into the role of father figure. He read bedtime stories, braided hair, and made pancakes shaped like animals. Sophia, now enrolled in a part-time business course, discovered that she wasn't just learning, she was thriving. But life had one more surprise in store. One crisp autumn morning, Sophia stood quietly in the garden, holding a small envelope in her hand. She had just returned from a doctor's appointment. When Ethan came out to find her, she looked up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "I'm pregnant," she said. For a moment, he said nothing. Then his face lit up with pure joy, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. The girls were thrilled. Harper declared she wanted a baby sister. Hazel wanted a baby brother. They settled the argument by deciding they'd be happy either way, as long as the baby liked coloring and pancakes. As the months passed, the house filled with even more laughter, more noise, more warmth. There were hard days too, late nights, stress, and the unpredictable nature of blending a family while healing old wounds, but they faced it all together. As partners, as a family. And on the night their son was born, with Harper and Hazel asleep in the next room, Ethan stood beside Sophia, cradling the tiny baby boy in his arms. "I never thought I could have this," she whispered. "You deserve all of it," Ethan said softly. "Every single bit." She rested her head against his shoulder, her heart finally full. She had found her home, not in the mansion, or the garden, or the ring on her hand, but in the love they had built together. Brick by brick, moment by moment, together, they had rewritten the story. And this time, it ended in peace. The arrival of the baby boy, whom they named Liam, brought with it a new kind of joy Sophia had never known. Holding him in her arms, she felt a deep, powerful love settle into her bones. It was different from the fear-filled love she had known when Harper and Hazel were born in a cold hospital room. Alone. This time, she wasn't alone. She was surrounded by warmth, safety, and hands always ready to catch her. Liam's soft cries in the night were met with Ethan's calm patience and Sophia's quiet lullabies. Together, they moved through sleepless nights and early mornings with an unspoken rhythm, passing bottles, rocking chairs, and whispered encouragements. One afternoon, while the twins were at preschool and Liam napped in his crib, Sophia sat with Ethan in the sun-drenched living room. She was sipping tea, eyes heavy with fatigue but filled with something brighter than ever before, contentment. "You've changed so much," Ethan said softly. Sophia glanced at him with a half smile. "I barely recognize the woman I used to be." "That woman survived," he said. "She's the reason this woman exists." She fell silent, struck by the weight of his words. "I was angry for a long time," she admitted. "At Jake, at life, at myself." Ethan leaned forward. "And now? I'm healing," she whispered, "because I finally stopped surviving and started living." They sat in silence, the kind that didn't need to be filled. Later that evening, Sophia received a message from a social worker. Jake had been seen in the area again. She hadn't heard from him since their brief confrontation months ago. At first, The idea of seeing him again made her skin crawl. But something had changed. She didn't feel fear anymore. She felt closure calling. With Ethan's support, she decided to meet Jake again, but this time, she brought no anger, just truth. They met at a quiet cafe near the edge of town. Jake looked older, his face hollow, clothes wrinkled, his eyes wary. "You look different," he said. "So do you," she replied, calm and composed. "I didn't think you'd want to see me again," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. "I didn't," she admitted, "but I needed to, for myself, and for my daughters." Jake shifted uncomfortably. "Do they know about me?" "They know they were born from love," she said, her voice steady, "and that's enough for now." He looked down, guilt etched into his features. "I wasn't ready. I don't think I ever was. I used to blame you for everything," she continued, her tone even. "But now, I just want peace. I don't need anything from you. Not your apologies, not your involvement. I just needed to say it." Jake nodded, eyes misting. "I understand." As she stood to leave, Sophia paused. "I hope you find your way." Back in the car, Ethan was waiting. She slid into the passenger seat, exhaling slowly. "How did it go?" he asked. She stared ahead for a moment, then turned to him. "It's over. For real this time." Ethan reached over and took her hand. No words, just the warmth of his palm against hers. That was all she needed. That night, Sophia found herself standing by Liam's crib, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. Behind her, Harper and Hazel slept curled together like mirrored reflections of her past and present. And for the first time, she allowed herself to fully believe. She was safe. She was free. A few weeks later, Ethan surprised her with something unexpected. "I know you've been thinking about doing something for yourself," he said one morning, sliding a folder across the kitchen island. "So I made a few calls." She opened it slowly. Inside were application papers for a business grant, along with a draft proposal for a small family-run wellness shop. Her jaw dropped. "I thought maybe you could combine your interests," Ethan said. "Natural skincare, local crafts, things that promote healing, made by people with stories like yours." Sophia blinked. "Ethan, this is more than I ever imagined. You deserve to dream again." And she did. With Ethan's help, she began preparing her pitch, working late into the evenings while juggling motherhood, coursework, and building a business model. It wasn't easy, but it was hers. As weeks passed, her confidence grew. The pitch day finally arrived, and though her voice trembled at first, her passion carried through. The panel was impressed, not just by her idea, but by her journey. A few days later, she received the call. The grant had been approved. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged Ethan, whispering over and over, "I did it." "No," he said, pulling her closer. "We did." That night, they danced in the garden under fairy lights with the twins twirling beside them and Liam cradled in Ethan's arms. And for the first time, Sophia didn't feel like a guest in someone else's life. She was home. Spring arrived quietly, blanketing the mansion grounds in soft green and blooming color. Sophia's shop, Willow and Light, was now more than just an idea. It was real. The lease had been signed. Renovations had begun. Her dream, once buried under layers of survival, was now painted across fresh walls and wooden shelves. Every morning, she walked the girls to preschool, baby Liam strapped snugly to her chest. And in the afternoons, she worked with local artisans and trauma survivors to build the shop's inventory. The place would be more than a store, it would be a haven. A safe space, a second chance, just like she'd been given. Ethan was her steady partner through it all, reviewing contracts, running errands, bringing her late-night coffee during planning meetings. He never hovered, never tried to take control. He simply lifted her higher, with patience and quiet pride. One Saturday morning, Sophia sat on the nursery floor folding tiny clothes when Harper tiptoed in. "Mommy," she whispered, eyes wide, "are you going to work again today?" Sophia smiled and pulled her into her lap. "Just for a few hours, sweetheart. Then I'll be home in time for dinner. Promise?" "Pinky promise." Hazel appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Daddy says we're going to the new place today, to help decorate." Sophia blinked. "He did?" Ethan leaned in behind them. Surprise. That afternoon, they visited the nearly finished shop. The walls were painted warm earth tones, sunlight streaming through wide front windows. The girls ran wild between shelves, chasing each other with decorative ribbons. Sophia stood near the counter, watching them. "Can you believe this is real?" she asked. Ethan joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "I never had a doubt." She turned to him, her voice soft. "I did, for a long time." "That's okay," he said, "because even when you didn't believe in yourself, I did." In the coming weeks, everything moved faster. Inventory arrived, shelves were stocked, marketing buzz began to build thanks to a small feature in a local newspaper, highlighting Sophia's mission to empower other single mothers and survivors. One evening, Sophia was locking up the shop when she noticed a woman standing nearby. Staring through the window, she looked tired, like Sophia once did, but her eyes held a flicker of hope. "Can I help you?" Sophia asked gently. The woman hesitated. "I read about you in the paper. I don't know why I came." "Really?" Sophia nodded slowly. "Maybe you came because you're ready for something better." The woman swallowed hard. "I have 2 kids, no support. I'm tired of barely surviving." Sophia took a deep breath. "Come by tomorrow. We're hiring part-time help. And we offer childcare vouchers for moms starting over." The woman's lips quivered. "You'd really do that?" Sophia smiled. "Someone once did it for me." As the woman walked away with a whispered thank you, Sophia turned and looked back at her store. No, not just a store. A lifeline, a lighthouse. And she was the one holding the light. Back at home, she found Ethan reading to the twins while Liam dozed against his chest. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them, her whole heart in one room. "Hey," Ethan whispered, spotting her. She crossed to him, curled into his side, and exhaled slowly. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I think, for the first time in years, I really am." Later that week, they were invited to a charity gala hosted by one of Ethan's partners. Sophia hadn't attended anything formal in years. The last time she had worn a dress like this, she was 18 and terrified of the future. But now, as she stood beside Ethan in a soft blue gown, with her head held high and his arms secure around her, she wasn't scared anymore. She was living the future she once thought was impossible. "You're glowing," Ethan whispered as cameras flashed. "I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be," she whispered back. During the event, Ethan introduced her to colleagues. And when asked about her business, he always stepped aside so she could speak. Her story captivated the room, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. "I used to think broken meant unworthy," she said to one woman. "But sometimes, the cracks are where the light gets in." Later that night, after the gala, they returned home to find the kids already asleep. Sophia stepped out onto the balcony with a cup of tea, staring up at the moonlit sky. Ethan joined her moments later, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. He smiled. "You're the bravest person I know." Sophia leaned against him, heart full. She had walked through fire, been left for dead, risen from ashes, and now, she was building something beautiful from the wreckage. Not just a life, a legacy. Autumn turned the trees golden, and the quiet hum of routine settled into their lives like a favorite melody. Sophia's shop, Willow and Light, was thriving, not only as a business but as a community hub. Women from all over the city began stopping by, not just to buy handcrafted soaps or herbal teas, but to feel seen, safe, and inspired. Sophia's days were full, balancing motherhood, meetings with suppliers, mentoring women in her employment program, and still finding time to kiss scraped knees, braid little pigtails, and tuck Liam in at night. Ethan remained her silent strength, whether it was handling late-night diaper changes or stepping in when Sophia needed rest. He was always there, and not just present, engaged, joyful, all in. One Sunday morning, the family drove out to the countryside for a rare day off. The girls picked wildflowers while Ethan carried Liam in a chest harness, and Sophia laughed more freely than she had in months. As they spread out a blanket under a sycamore tree, Harper asked, "Mommy, are we happy now?" Sophia turned to look at Ethan. His eyes were soft, full of warmth. "Yes, sweetheart," she answered, pulling Harper into her lap. "We really are." Later that evening, after the kids were asleep, Sophia and Ethan curled up on the couch. A fire crackled softly. Sophia rested her head on his chest, tracing lazy circles on his shirt. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "Oh," Ethan teased, grinning. "I want to do more." "More?" he asked, curious. "More for women like me. I want to start a foundation, scholarships, job training, maybe even temporary housing, something that gives second chances. Not just handouts." Ethan stared at her, pride blooming on his face. "You're incredible, you know that?" She shrugged, smiling. I don't want my story to end with being rescued. I want to pass the torch." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Then let's build it, together." The next week, they filed the paperwork. The foundation would be called the Hazel plus Harper Fund, in honor of the little girls who had given Sophia a reason to survive, even when she had nothing else. Soon, donations began to trickle in from friends, local business owners, and even strangers who had read Sophia's story in the paper. Her inbox filled with letters from women who were struggling, hoping, fighting, and she answered every single one. Then, unexpectedly, she received a letter that made her pause. It was from Jake. He'd moved to another state and was trying to turn his life around. The letter wasn't long, just an apology, and a promise to never interfere. He said he was sober, employed, and undergoing therapy. Sophia stared at the letter for a long time, fingers trembling. "I forgive you," she whispered. And that was that. Forgiveness didn't mean trust, didn't mean re-entry, but it meant peace. And that was enough. One rainy night, Sophia and Ethan sat on the front porch, watching water fall in silver sheets across the garden. The air smelled like damp earth and fresh beginnings. "I've been thinking, too," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. Sophia turned to him, curious. "You should run the next Women's Entrepreneur Summit downtown." She blinked. "Me? Speak publicly? I don't even know how to start." "Yes, you do," he said gently. "Start with the truth. Tell them how a girl who had nothing built something out of the broken pieces." Sophia hesitated, then smiled. "Okay, I'll try." The next few weeks were a blur of planning, organizing, and deep breathing exercises. Sophia wrote and rewrote her speech a dozen times. But when the day finally came, and she stood in front of an auditorium full of women, some mothers, some students, some just barely hanging on, she spoke from the heart. "I used to think I was too broken to dream again. But I learned that your past doesn't get to define your future, not unless you let it. I wasn't saved by money. I wasn't saved by a man. I was saved by a decision to believe that I deserved more. And so do you." The applause that followed wasn't thunderous, but it was real. Afterward, a young woman in her 20s approached her. "Your story, it's mine too. And for the first time, I think I might be okay." Sophia hugged her, tears brimming. "You will be. Just take the first step." That night, back home, Ethan held her in his arms. "You were incredible," he whispered. "I was terrified. And yet, you stood tall." She smiled into his shoulder. "I stood because you were there to catch me if I fell." The seasons changed again. Liam said his first word. Harper lost her first tooth. Hazel learned to read. And Sophia bloomed. She had once been a beggar with nothing but 2 babies and a name full of shame. Now, she was a wife, a mother, a businesswoman, a speaker, a light, and most importantly, a believer. In herself, in love, in second chances. Winter arrived softly that year, dusting the mansion grounds with snow and filling the rooms with the scent of cinnamon, pine, and something even sweeter, belonging. The once silent halls now echoed with the laughter of 3 children. Liam was walking, clumsily but proudly, chasing Harper and Hazel through the decorated living room as they hung ornaments on the tree. Each twinkle of the lights reflected a story, a moment, a memory, stitched together from the pain they had all survived and the joy they had chosen instead. Sophia stood back, watching them, heart full and eyes misty. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "1 year ago," he said softly, "you were sitting on a cold sidewalk. And I was too busy to notice what really mattered." She looked at him, smiled gentle. "And yet you stopped." "I'd stop every time," he replied, 100 times. Sophia leaned into him. "So would I." That evening, After the kids were tucked into bed with stories and warm cocoa, Sophia and Ethan curled up together on the couch. The fire crackled beside them. Outside, snow continued to fall quietly. "I've been journaling again," she said, reaching into the side table and pulling out her leather notebook. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Anything I can read?" She smirked. "Maybe just this part." She flipped to the last page and read aloud. "I used to believe my story ended the moment I was left behind. But now I see. That was just the beginning. My brokenness wasn't a period. It was a comma, a pause before the beauty." Ethan exhaled, moved. "You're a writer now, huh?" "Maybe," she said with a wink. "Or maybe I'm just someone who finally knows what peace feels like." He reached over and took her hand. "I have something for you." From behind a pillow, he pulled out a small box, this time. Not a ring, but a key. Sophia looked at it, puzzled. "What's this?" "An office space. Upstairs. For you." She blinked. "Me? You've outgrown the kitchen table." He teased. "I want you to have your own space. To write, to dream, to run your foundation, to be exactly who you are." Sophia bit her lip, emotion rising. "You always think of everything." "I just think of you," he said softly. "Always." The next morning, the house was filled with excitement. Christmas Eve magic was in the air. Harper and Hazel raced down the stairs in matching pajamas. Liam babbling behind them with a big red bow stuck to his head. Ethan handed Sophia a mug of hot chocolate as they watched the kids unwrap handmade gifts from friends and neighbors. At one point, Harper held up a drawing she had made. "Look, Mommy, it's us, me, Hazel, Liam, you, and Daddy." Sophia looked at the picture and felt tears prick her eyes. The stick figures were lopsided. The colors outside the lines, but the joy was perfect. Later, when the kids were napping and snow blanketed the garden outside, Sophia and Ethan stood at the upstairs window, looking out over the property. "You changed my life," she whispered. "You changed mine first," he replied. She turned to him. "What do you think it would have been like if you hadn't stopped that day?" He was quiet for a moment. "I don't know, but I think the universe has a way of pulling us back to the people we're meant to find." She nodded, believing him. "So this was always going to happen?" "Maybe not always," he said, "but the moment I saw you, I knew I couldn't walk away again." Outside, the snow slowed. Inside, a sense of stillness settled over them, not emptiness, but peace. Sophia stepped away from the window, heading toward her new office space. She opened the door slowly, heart fluttering. Inside was a desk, a bookshelf, and a framed photo of her and the kids. On the desk sat her journal, open to a fresh page. She sat down and picked up her pen. Writing. This is what healing looks like. Not perfect, not quiet, but real. A life built not in spite of what I've been through, but because of it. She paused, looked toward the window, and smiled. And I'm not done yet. Downstairs, laughter erupted again as the twins woke from their nap and ran toward the kitchen. Ethan was already waiting with cookies and hot cider. Sophia stood at the top of the stairs, watching the family she had once only dreamed of, now real. Now hers. She descended the steps one by one, every footfall a reminder that her journey had been long, but worth every step. As she reached the bottom and joined the chaos of holiday giggles, she whispered to herself, I made it home. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Tellinight. At Tellinight, stories remind us that healing begins with hope, and even the gentlest kindness can rewrite a destiny. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss a story that could brighten your day or transform your perspective. Until our next story, keep your heart open and your spirit brave.